All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm Thomas and I do educational material. And today is video number 134 on the reciprocal system of theory. This theory was uh, invented by Dewey B. Larson back in the 20th century. He died back in 1990. It is a system of theory, meaning that it is um, a theory of everything. And if you can understand how the theory works, you can plug it into anything that you want, and you can uh, get your own answers from it. And the basic gist of it is that we have a universe of motion. It's not a universe of matter, not a universe of energy, but a universe of motion. Motion, according to Larson, is the relationship between time and space. Time and space have a reciprocal relationship, uh, a generalized reciprocal relationship between them. That means that they have the same qualities, except that they are inverses of one another. And the two most basic qualities that they have are uh, three or more dimensions. That's called coordinate space. And since space has that quality, time also has that quality. So there is also a coordinate time. And what we know about time is that it's always progressing, moving forward, getting later and later. And so, therefore, space also has that quality. Larson calls that clock time and clock space. So, the progression of space is space always getting farther and farther apart. Observed by the Hubble telescope in the recession of the distant galaxies. Space and time also come only in discrete units. Um, there's a minimum unit of time and a minimum unit of space. Nothing less than that. Anything less than that, and you go into the other. So if you're less than 1 unit of space, you are in a realm of time only. And if you're in less than a unit of time, you're in a realm of space only. Larson calls these the time region and the space region. And those are mini regions within the greater time-space region and space-time region, respectively. Okay, now we are looking at the first of his 3-volume Structure of the Physical Universe. This is his most comprehensive work. Came out in the 1980s. This first volume actually came out, I think, in 1979. It's called Nothing But Motion. And this book covers mostly physics and some chemistry in here. And then his other two books of this 3-volume set include Basic Properties of Matter, which is primarily on chemistry, and A Universe of Motion, which is entirely on astronomy. Okay, we are in chapter 1, and he's kind of just introducing the idea, and he's really kind of trying to poke holes in the legacy science theory, like what they've come up with so far. And he's really explaining how the reciprocal system of theory is really everything that the scientists have claimed that they wanted all along, that they've been trying to find all along, but then it comes right up into their face and they reject it because it didn't come from the right sources, and it doesn't help them with their own reputations and their careers. Okay, now, so he had just gotten done talking about Percival Bridgman, one of the all-time greats of science, and there he says, the ordinary scientist subscribes, quote, have not been thought through carefully, but are held in the comfortable belief that someone must have examined them at some time. So, he's really saying that um, scientists don't really do their own research. They just assume that somebody way back when must have examined this already for it to be here in front of my face. Talking about kind of the really the matter concept, the universe of matter, and also the universe of energy by E equals mc squared. So then he's going to come to another quote from Einstein. In one of his books, Einstein points out that the radiation problem is an extremely difficult one, and he concludes that our only way out seems to be to take for granted the fact that space has the physical property of transmitting electromagnetic waves, and not to bother too much about the meaning of this statement. Does that sound like a scientific statement? It certainly doesn't. Take for granted and not to bother too much about the meaning. Okay, so here goes Larson. Here in this statement, Einstein reveals unintentionally just what is wrong with the prevailing basic physical theories and why a revision of the fundamental concepts of those theories is necessary. Far too many difficult problems have been evaded by simply assuming an answer and taking it for granted. This point is all the more significant because the shortcomings of the matter concept and the theories it has generated are by no means confined to the instances where no plausible explanations of the observed phenomena have been produced. In many other cases where explanations of one kind or another have actually been formulated, the validity of these explanations is completely dependent on ad hoc assumptions that conflict with observed facts. The nuclear theory of the atom is typical, inasmuch as it is now clear that the atom is not an indivisible unit. The concept of a universe of matter demands that it be constructed of elementary material units of some kind. Since the observed subatomic particles are the only known candidates for this role, it has been taken for granted, as mentioned earlier, that the atom is a composite of subatomic particles. Consideration of the various possible combinations has led to the hypothesis that is now generally accepted: an atom in which there is a nucleus composed of protons and neutrons surrounded by some kind of an arrangement of electrons. But if we undertake a critical examination of this hypothesis, it is immediately apparent that there are direct conflicts with known physical facts. Protons are positively charged, and charges of the same sign repel each other. According to the established laws of physics, therefore, a nucleus composed wholly or partly of protons would immediately disintegrate. This is a cold, hard physical fact, and there is not the slightest evidence that is subject to abrogation or modification under any circumstances or conditions. Furthermore, the neutron is observed to be unstable, with a lifetime of only about 15 minutes, and hence this particle fails to meet one of the most essential requirements of a constituent of a stable atom, the requirement of stability. The status of the electron as an atomic constituent is even more dubious. The properties which it must have to play such a role are altogether different from the properties of the observed electron. Indeed, as Herbert Dingle points out, we can deal with the electron as a constituent of the atom only as we ascribe to it properties not possessed by any imaginable objects at all. A fundamental tenet of science is that The facts of observation and experiment are the scientific court of last resort. They pronounce the final verdict irrespective of whatever weight may be given to other considerations. As expressed by Richard Feynman, quote, if a proposed new law or theory disagrees with experiment, it is wrong. In that simple statement is the key to science. That is all there is to it. And yeah, so, that's where Larson is coming from with this, is that scientists have stopped doing science. The things that we, when we're growing up, when we learn science, that we understand to be the basic bedrock, of the scientific method and of scientific philosophy, have been abandoned by the scientists themselves in the 20th century and now the 21st century. And maybe even before that as well. The situation, back to Larson, the situation with respect to the nuclear theory is perfectly clear. The hypothesis of an atomic nucleus composed of protons and neutrons is in direct conflict with the observed properties of electric charges and the observed behavior of the neutron, while the conflicts between the atomic version of the electron and physical reality are numerous and very serious. According to the established principles of science, and following the rule that Feynman laid down in the foregoing quotation, the nuclear theory should have been dismantled, or it says discarded, have been discarded summarily years ago. But here we see the power of the currently accepted fundamental physical concept. The concept of a universe of matter demands a building block theory of the atom, a theory in which the atom, since it is not an indivisible building block itself, is a thing composed of parts, which in turn are things of a lower order. In the absence of any way of reconciling such a theory with existing physical knowledge, either the basic physical concept or standard scientific procedures and tests of validity had to be sacrificed. Since abandonment of the existing basic concept of the nature of the universe is essentially unthinkable in the ordinary course of theory construction, sound scientific procedure naturally lost the decision. The conflicts between the nuclear theory and observation were arbitrarily eliminated by means of a set of ad hoc assumptions. In order to prevent the breakup of the hypothetical nucleus by reason of the repulsion between the positive charges of the individual protons, it was simply assumed that there is a nuclear force of attraction which counterbalances the known force of repulsion. And in order to build a stable atom out of unstable particles, it was assumed, again, purely ad hoc, that the neutron, for some unknown reason, is stable within the nucleus. The more difficult problem of inventing some way of justifying the electron as an atomic constituent is currently being handled by assuming that the atomic electron is an entity that transcends reality. It is unrelated to anything that has ever been observed and is itself not capable of being observed as being observed. An abstract thing no longer intuitable in terms of the familiar aspects of everyday experience, as Margenau describes it. What the theorist's commitment to the matter concept has done in this instance is to force them to invent the equivalent of the demons that their primitive ancestors called upon when similarly faced with something that they were unable to explain. The mysterious nuclear force might just as well be called the god of the nucleus. Like an ancient god, it was designed for one particular purpose. It has no other functions, and there is no independent confirmation of his existence. In effect, the assumptions that have been made in an effort to justify retention of the matter concept have involved a partial return to the earlier spirit concept of the nature of the universe. And I might add, to some extent, that has been celebrated by some people who have written about, nuclear theory, quantum mechanics, and the like, that bringing back this kind of spirit concept of the god of the nucleus and the fact that it doesn't make sense whatsoever unless you posit all of these ad hoc assumptions is somewhat celebrated by these people as being, some kind of breakthrough in terms of the invention ability of the scientists to come up with some kind of garbage like that. It's really, when you really think about it, it is kind of sacrilegious, or I would say, you know. Almost like an insult to spirituality or the spirit world or God in general to be just making stuff up like this. Okay, back to Larson. Since it is now clear that the concept of a universe of matter is not valid, one may well ask, how has it been possible for physical science to make such a remarkable record of achievement on the basis of an erroneous fundamental concept? The answer is that only a relatively small part of current physical theory is actually derived from the general physical principles based on that fundamental concept. A scientific theory, explains Braithwaite, quote, is a deductive system in which observable consequences logically follow from the conjunction of observed facts with the set of fundamental hypotheses of the system. But modern physical theory is not one deductive system of the kind described by Braithwaite. It is a composite made up of a great many such systems. As expressed by Feynman, quote, today our theories of physics, the laws of physics, are a multitude of different parts and pieces that do not fit together very well. We do not have one structure from which all is deduced. End quote. Back to Larson. One of the principal reasons for this lack of unity is that modern physical theory is a hybrid structure derived from two totally different sources. The small-scale theories applicable to an individual phenomena, which constitute the great majority of the parts and pieces, are empirical generalizations derived by inductive reasoning from factual premises. At one time, it was rather confidently believed that the accumulation of empirically derived knowledge then existing, the inductive science commonly associated with the name of Newton, would eventually be expanded to encompass the whole of the universe. But when observation and experiment began to penetrate what we may call the far out regions, the realms of the very small, the very large, and the very fast, Newtonian science was unable to keep pace. As a consequence, the construction of basic physical theory fell into the hands of a school of scientists who contend that inductive methods are incapable of arriving at general physical principles. The axiomatic basis of theoretical physics cannot be an inference from experience, but must be free invention, was Einstein's dictum. Basically, they're saying that since we cannot construct this theory through inductive methods by arriving at general physical principles, then obviously we have to just invent stuff. Um, we're not able to use Newton's theory for a lot of the new data that we're getting, and so it is incumbent upon us to just invent stuff, because that preserves our employment and our esteem among the people as being scientific wizards. Okay, back to Larson. The result of the ascendancy of this inventive school of science has been to split physical science into two separate parts. As matters now stand, the subsidiary principles, those that govern individual physical phenomena and the low-level interactions, are products of induction from factual premises. The general principles, those that apply to the large-scale phenomena of the universe as a whole, are, as Einstein describes them, pure inventions of the human mind, where the observations are accurate and the generalizations are justified. The inductively derived laws and theories are correct, at least within certain limits. The fact that they constitute by far the greater part of the current structure of physical thought therefore explains why physical science has been so successful in practice. But where empirical data is inadequate or unavailable, present-day science relies on deductions from the currently accepted general principles, the products of pure invention. And this is where physical theory has gone astray. Nature does not agree with these free inventions of the human mind. This disagreement with nature should not come as a surprise. Any careful consideration of the situation will show that free invention is inherently incapable of arriving at the correct answers to problems of long standing. Such problems do not continue to exist because of a lack of competence on the part of those who are trying to solve them, or because of a lack of adequate methods of dealing with them. They exist because some essential piece or pieces of information are missing. Without this essential information, the correct answer cannot be obtained except by unlikely accident. This rules out inductive methods, which build upon empirical information. Invention is no more capable of arriving at the correct result without the essential information than induction. But it is not subject to the same limitations. It can and does arrive at some results. Okay, we'll leave it there and take over tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.